If you want to be respected, liked, and taken seriously, your actions matter more than anything else. But let's be brutally honest for a moment. How many times have you betrayed yourself just to be accepted? How many times have you swallowed your truth? Stayed silent, laughed when it wasn't actually funny, nodded along while your soul was screaming no, just to keep the peace, avoid tension, or stay liked? That kind of compromise burns. It slowly tears something sacred inside you. And the painful part is that even after all that, they still don't truly see you. Not really, because the hard truth is this: the world doesn't value who you are until you reveal what you're willing to walk away from. Stoic philosophy reminds us that a meaningful life is not built on the approval of others, but on the approval of your own conscience. So ask yourself honestly, are you living to be liked, or are you living to be respected? Because those two things are not the same. The longer you chase being liked, the further you drift from real respect. But the moment your actions begin aligning with your deepest values, without apology, that's when everything shifts. That's when people begin to feel your presence before you even say a word. That's when you become impossible to overlook, if something in those words stirred you. If you're ready to stop begging for tiny pieces of validation and instead build unshakable self-respect, consider subscribing as a quiet promise to yourself, a commitment to grow, to think deeper, and to act more truthfully. This is not just another piece of content, it's a journey inward, and it begins right now. The importance of actions for respect. There is something unspoken that shapes how people treat you, and it has very little to do with how kind your heart is or how pure your intentions may be. Most people won't remember exactly what you said, how much you cared, or how intensely you tried in your mind. What they remember is what you actually did. Actions leave footprints, feelings do not. You might want to be known as loyal, strong, or trustworthy, but if your behavior doesn't consistently reflect those traits, they never truly land in the minds of others. This is where many people become confused. They believe that because their intentions are good, the world should automatically understand them. But the reality is that the world does not run on intentions. It runs on observation. And observation is shaped by what you repeatedly do, both publicly and privately. Respect is not something you demand, it's something you earn, and you don't earn it through words, you earn it through your record. Think about someone you truly respect. Maybe it's a teacher, a mentor, a boss, a friend, or even a parent. Chances are the respect you feel for them isn't only because of what they said, it's because of how they showed up, especially when situations became difficult. That's what gives a person weight. You can feel it the moment they enter a room. They don't need to announce themselves. Their discipline, reliability, and quiet consistency speak before they ever do. That kind of respect lasts. It isn't loud and it isn't performative. It is built quietly over time and carried like armor. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one." That single sentence captures the heart of this idea. Stop explaining who you are and begin proving it through the way you live. The more you try to explain yourself, the more it reveals that you haven't fully embodied it yet. Let your actions explain you. Let your behavior define you. Allow your discipline and your decisions to do the heavy lifting. Because when your behavior is aligned with your values, you stop needing to prove anything to anyone. That alignment is what people respect. It's what they remember. Here is something most people rarely admit. Everyone is watching. Maybe not with judgment, but with curiosity, especially when you are quiet, consistent, and intentional. People begin to notice you differently. They observe how you treat others when no one is watching. They notice how you handle pressure, how you respond to stress, and how you carry responsibility. Over time, the pattern they observe becomes the truth they believe about you. That's why people who act with integrity, even silently, build unshakable reputations. It's why they are trusted. It's why they are respected. Carl Jung once said, "You are what you do, not what you say you'll do." It's a harsh truth, but an important one. You can promise the world, but if your actions don't match those promises, your words turn into noise. But when your actions do match, you become something powerful. We live in a time where it's incredibly easy to say a lot, to post, declare, and publicly describe who we are and what we believe. Yet very few people actually follow through. Very few ensure that their lifestyle reflects the message they speak. And that's exactly why actions stand out more than ever today. When you show up on time, keep your word, stay calm during pressure, and finish what you start, people notice. You don't need to shout to be recognized. You simply need to show up when others don't, again and again. Eventually, your name becomes associated with trust, discipline, and reliability, with someone who doesn't need to convince anyone of anything. Epictetus once said, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." This is the core of Stoicism and also the core of true respect. It's not about impressing people. It's about living with such consistency, stability, and alignment that people can feel the difference. They trust your presence because your behavior has proven it over time. They remember you not because of some dramatic speech, but because of how your actions made them feel, especially in moments when no one else stepped up. The most respected individuals in any environment, whether at work, within friendships, or in leadership, are rarely the loudest people in the room. They are the ones whose actions echo. People remember them because they carried weight, because they stayed consistent while others were chaotic, because they stood firm when others gave in, and around them, people often feel safer, steadier, and more grounded. That's not charisma, that's not charm, that is action, that is alignment, and that is what real respect is built upon. Seneca once wrote, "Most powerful is he who has himself in his own power." Your actions reveal whether this is true for you. When you have control over yourself, your habits, your reactions, your words, and your energy, you move through life differently. You no longer chase respect. You create it. You don't beg to be seen. You become someone who simply cannot be ignored, not through force, but through consistency. The world may never openly thank you for the effort you put in, but it will remember you for what you did. Respect versus being liked. The big question. There is a quiet kind of pain that comes from constantly trying to be agreeable. It looks like nodding when you want to disagree, laughing when something feels wrong, and saying yes when your entire body is telling you no. At first, people seem to like you. You become easy to be around, low conflict, always pleasant. But after a while, something strange begins to happen. You start noticing they don't truly listen to you. They rarely ask what you want. In group settings, you're often overlooked. They cross your boundaries, interrupt you mid-sentence, or make decisions without considering your voice. And then one day, it hits you clearly. Being liked does not mean being respected. In fact, those two things can exist on completely different levels. Human beings are wired to want connection. That isn't weakness, it's biology. But what many people confuse is the idea that approval and respect are the same thing. They aren't. One is about comfort, while the other is about depth. One says, "You make me feel good." The other says, "I recognize your value and I trust it." The reality is that most people settle for being liked because it feels safer. It creates less tension. But being respected requires discomfort. Sometimes it means standing alone. It means choosing what is right for your soul rather than what feels easy in the moment. And that is a muscle most people never develop. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But becoming who you truly are requires letting go of the version of you the world expects. It means risking silence when others don't agree with you. It means walking away from groups, friendships, or even careers that only accept you under certain conditions. That level of self-honesty is frightening. Yet it is also the process that builds real self-respect. And when respect begins within you, it naturally starts commanding it from others. At some point in life, everyone faces the same question. Do I want to be popular, or do I want to be principled? Chasing popularity often means performing for people. You bend, reshape, and shrink yourself to fit the room. But living by principles is different. That's when you enter a space and occupy it fully. Not with arrogance, but with honesty. It's when you say exactly what you mean and stand behind what you say. You begin speaking from your center instead of from fear. And that shift changes how people perceive you. Suddenly, you're not just nice. You become someone people actually listen to, someone they trust, even when they don't always agree. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." This isn't only moral advice, it's practical guidance. When you consistently follow your inner compass, people can feel it. They stop trying to manipulate you. They stop pushing your boundaries because they understand there are limits. You are no longer liked simply because you are convenient. You are respected because you are solid. Many people fear making this shift because it often comes with loss. You might lose a few people. Some won't like the version of you that no longer bends so easily. And that's okay. Let them go. Because what you gain in that process is priceless. You gain alignment. You gain peace. You gain the quiet strength of knowing you didn't betray yourself just to be accepted. And people do notice. Those who value integrity, those who appreciate depth and purpose, they start gravitating toward you. Those are the people worth having in your life. Epictetus once said, "It is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows." When you assume you already understand respect, you stop searching for its deeper truth. But genuine respect is never about charm or appearances. It's about who you become when nobody is applauding. It appears when you show up anyway. When you say no without long explanations. When you sit with discomfort instead of betraying your truth. That is where respect lives, in quiet strength, in tension, and in the courage to disappoint others when necessary. And to be clear, you don't need to become cold, harsh, or distant in order to be respected. You don't have to abandon kindness. In fact, kindness with boundaries is one of the strongest forms of power. It says, "I can care about you without betraying myself." That balance is rare, and it's exactly what creates lasting influence. People may like many individuals, but they respect the one who stands firm, who holds the line, and who chooses honesty over comfort every time. Consistency building confidence over time. There is something deeply reassuring about someone who does exactly what they say they will do. No drama, no surprises, just quiet and consistent follow-through. In a world obsessed with quick success and loud results, we often forget how powerful it is to be predictable in the best possible way. And predictable doesn't mean boring, it means dependable. It means someone who shows up not just once or twice when it's convenient, but again and again, even when nobody is watching. That kind of consistency creates something rare: trust. Not only from other people, but also within yourself. Most of us rarely notice how small actions accumulate over time. One gym session feels good, but 3 months of discipline changes your posture, your energy, and the way people perceive you. One honest conversation builds a connection, but 10 honest conversations build trust. One promise kept earns appreciation, but 100 promises kept, even the quiet, unnoticed ones, create a reputation. That is the real nature of consistency. It's quiet, yet incredibly powerful. It's invisible in the moment, yet it shapes how the world responds to you. It's not flashy and it's not instant, which is exactly why most people give up on it too early. You don't become trustworthy by talking about trust. You become trustworthy by proving it repeatedly, and not only when things are easy. Real consistency is built in resistance. It's showing up on the days when everything inside you wants to withdraw. It's honoring your word not because it's convenient, but because it defines who you are. A certain confidence grows from discipline, the kind that never needs to shout. You don't have to constantly tell people you're reliable or strong. They will sense it themselves. They'll notice it when they see you consistently showing up for your responsibilities, your boundaries, and most importantly for yourself. Here's something many people overlook. People are always observing your patterns, not just your potential. You may be talented, passionate, even brilliant, but if you are inconsistent, others will never fully trust you. Think about someone in your life who is unpredictable. Sometimes they show up, sometimes they disappear, sometimes they keep their word, sometimes they vanish. How much energy do you waste wondering if they will actually follow through? Now reverse that idea. If you want others to believe in you, rely on you, and respect you, you cannot leave them guessing. Epictetus said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." That is the process. Not perfection, not performance, just steady alignment between what you say and what you do. The beautiful thing is that once you begin practicing it, confidence grows naturally. You stop overthinking, you stop doubting yourself, you begin trusting your own discipline, and when that happens, your entire energy changes. People feel safer around you. You're no longer the person with great ideas and weak execution. You become the one who actually gets things done. But let's be honest, consistency isn't always exciting. In many ways, it's repetitive. You follow the same habits, stick to the same routines, and sometimes it feels like nothing is changing. Yet that's exactly where growth hides, buried underneath the routine. It's similar to training in the gym. You don't notice yourself getting stronger day by day, but one day you lift something heavy and suddenly realize you've changed. Stoic philosophy reminds us not to fall for the trap of instant gratification. Seneca once said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." We waste time waiting for motivation, waiting for the perfect opportunity, waiting until we feel ready. That's how years quietly slip away. Consistency isn't about waiting, it's about acting anyway. Think of your life like a structure being built. Every small act of discipline is a brick. On its own, it may look insignificant, but over time you are constructing a foundation, and when life becomes unstable, when emotions run high or circumstances shift, it's that foundation that keeps you steady. People don't need you to be a superhero. They simply need to know that you'll be there, that you're dependable, that you don't vanish the moment things become uncomfortable. That kind of presence earns deep respect because it's rare. Someone may have charm, charisma, or even brilliance, but none of that replaces the strength of reliability. Consistency builds credibility, and credibility is what transforms respect from a temporary moment into a lasting legacy. So, if you ever feel overlooked or underestimated, don't try to become louder. Become more consistent. Show up more fully. Guard your word more carefully. Build that invisible weight behind your name. Eventually, people stop questioning what you're capable of because your actions have already answered that question over time. Without needing to explain yourself, you become someone others trust, and someone you trust as well. Setting clear boundaries. It often begins with something small. Someone makes a comment that feels slightly disrespectful. You brush it off. Later, they do it again, this time more direct. Still, you laugh it away because you don't want to seem overly sensitive. Before long, a pattern appears. They've learned exactly how far they can go with you, and you didn't even notice when it started. That's the nature of boundaries. If you don't establish them early, life will eventually establish them for you, and usually not in your favor. The people who walk over you are not always intentionally cruel. Sometimes they are simply testing the space you've allowed. And if the walls are soft, they will keep pushing further. We all want to be liked. We all try to avoid conflict. But constantly being agreeable carries a cost, and that cost is usually your peace of mind. If you've ever felt emotionally drained around certain people, constantly questioning your own needs just to keep things smooth, that's your inner voice asking for boundaries. Setting boundaries doesn't make you difficult. It makes you clear. And clarity is a gift, not just for you, but for everyone around you. It tells people what is acceptable and what is not. And clarity naturally creates respect. People may not always like your boundaries at first, but they will eventually understand them if you remain firm. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." When you repeatedly tolerate behavior that feels wrong to you, you slowly internalize it. Your self-respect weakens, your confidence fades, you begin questioning your own instincts. But when you start setting boundaries, when you calmly say, "I'm not okay with this," you begin coloring your soul with strength instead of submission. At first, that shift can feel uncomfortable, but over time it becomes a form of armor. The reality is that creating a boundary is only half the work. The real strength lies in enforcing it. You can tell someone your limits, but if you forgive every time those limits are crossed, your words eventually lose their meaning. Imagine locking your front door but leaving the key under the mat. A boundary without consequences is only a suggestion. And people rarely respect suggestions. They respect standards. This doesn't mean you have to become cold or aggressive. Enforcing a boundary doesn't require yelling or slamming doors. Sometimes it simply means silence, distance, choosing not to participate in the same pattern again. Carl Jung once wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." Boundaries begin from that place. They grow out of knowing what honors you and what diminishes you, and then refusing to accept anything that pulls you away from that truth. That level of self-acceptance is powerful. It says, "I trust myself enough to protect my energy, even if it disappoints someone else." Yes, some people will leave. Some may label you selfish, but the people who truly value you will either rise to meet your standard or quietly step away. Either way, you win. One of the biggest myths about boundaries is that they push people away. In reality, they reveal who is genuinely willing to stay and grow with you. Without boundaries, relationships become unbalanced. One person keeps giving while the other keeps taking. Over time, resentment builds and communication collapses. But when mutual respect exists, when both people understand where the lines are drawn, something powerful happens. Trust deepens, connection grows stronger. Both individuals feel safe because they are no longer walking on eggshells, they are walking in truth. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Boundaries are one of the clearest ways we practice self-mastery. They remind us that we don't have to attend every argument we're invited to. We don't have to explain our no again and again, and we certainly don't have to shrink ourselves just to fit someone else's comfort zone. Mastery is not about controlling others, it's about controlling our reactions, our choices, and the space we allow around us. And that space is sacred. Seneca once wrote, "As is a tale, so is life." Not how long it is, but how good it is. The quality of your life is directly tied to the quality of your boundaries. If you constantly feel drained, anxious or unsure of where you stand with people, it may be time to examine the walls around your peace. Are they strong enough? Are they being respected? And most importantly, are you the one enforcing them? You don't need to justify your boundaries to everyone. You don't need their approval. What you need is alignment. When your actions match your values, when your no is just as firm as your yes, you become unshakable, not loud, not aggressive, just clear. And clarity, when practiced over time, becomes power. Not because it controls others, but because it frees you, the path to earning respect. There is a quiet form of power in someone who truly knows what they're doing. You can sense it even before they speak. It isn't arrogance and it isn't loud confidence. It's the calm presence of someone who has done the work day after day, month after month, even when no one was watching. That level of respect doesn't appear by accident. It is built through repetition, refinement, and deep focus over time. In a world that constantly chases shortcuts and surface-level success, true mastery shines like a lighthouse. It attracts attention without forcing it, because excellence naturally pulls people in. Too often, people want recognition without the process. They want to be valued, respected, even admired, yet they skip the step of actually becoming excellent. Many tell themselves that simply being a good person should be enough. And while your worth as a human isn't tied to productivity, your influence in the world often is. You might be kind, compassionate, and a great listener, and those qualities absolutely matter. But when it comes to earning respect, people look at outcomes. They notice contribution, and above all, they remember consistency. The beauty of mastery is that it doesn't demand natural talent. What it truly requires is commitment, discipline, and the courage to be bad at something long enough to become good. It asks for patience through long plateaus and the humility to keep learning. Mastery is the long game. It means saying, "I'm not here to impress today. I'm here to improve over the next decade." That perspective is rare, and it reflects the Stoic mindset. Epictetus once said, "No great thing is created suddenly." It's a powerful reminder that real value and real respect cannot be rushed. It must be earned gradually. When you dedicate yourself deeply to something, whether it's your career, a craft, or a skill, you start changing from the inside out. Your posture shifts, your voice becomes steadier, you stop needing constant validation because your work begins to validate you. People can sense that shift. They begin asking for your opinion more often. They pay closer attention when you speak, not because you demanded it, but because you carry clarity that only comes from competence. And competence is built quietly, brick by brick. The trap most people fall into is dabbling. They try something for a week, maybe a month, and then move on the moment it becomes difficult. The second discomfort appears, they retreat. But discomfort is the gatekeeper of growth. Those who push past it, those who continue showing up even when motivation fades, are the ones who separate themselves from the crowd. Seneca once wrote, "Difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body." Every challenge along the road to mastery refines you. It shapes you into someone sharper, steadier, and impossible to overlook. Think about the people you admire most. Whether they are leaders, creators, athletes, or thinkers, none of them arrived where they are by accident. They chose a path and continued walking it even when no one was applauding. They kept going when the process felt dull, when the work was lonely, when progress seemed invisible. That's the sacrifice mastery demands. You trade temporary comfort for long-term strength. Over time, that exchange pays off not only in skill, but also in the quiet respect of those who recognize your discipline. Aristotle once said, "We are what we repeatedly do." Excellence, then, is not a single act, it's a habit. If you want to become excellent, It must turn into part of your daily rhythm, something you return to again and again, not because someone is watching, but because you refuse to settle for mediocrity. And eventually there's a reward for that commitment. When you become truly skilled at what you do, people don't just respect your ability, they begin respecting your time, your energy, and your standards. They understand that you don't settle for less, and that standard naturally raises the level of those around you. The respect that grows from mastery is not loud or attention-seeking. It's quiet, grounded, and deeply felt. It's the kind of presence that enters the room before you say a single word. The kind that makes people pause when you offer insight, because they know the work behind your voice. They know you've tested your ideas, failed repeatedly, learned through experience, and earned every inch of your understanding. That type of presence doesn't ask for respect, it commands it through action. Actions speak louder. There is something powerful about a person who doesn't feel the need to constantly announce their intentions. Someone who doesn't broadcast every plan or promise, but simply moves forward and does the work. No build-up, no long speeches, just action. In today's world, that kind of behavior is surprisingly rare. Talking about goals often receives more attention than actually achieving them, but over time, people stop listening to promises. Instead, they watch patterns. They don't focus on what you said you would build. They look at what is actually standing in front of them. That is why actions speak louder. Not because they are flashy, but because they are real. They are tangible and impossible to deny. The moment your behavior begins to align with your words, people respond differently. You don't need to demand seriousness. You become someone who naturally commands it. Not because you are flawless, but because you follow through. When your daily choices reflect your values, not just in theory but in practice, you become magnetic. We all know someone who talks endlessly about their future success. They're always excited about the next big plan or the next big move. Yet 6 months later, nothing has changed. The same excuses remain. The same lack of movement continues. It doesn't make them bad people. It simply means they haven't learned a crucial truth yet. Credibility is earned, not announced. You don't gain respect by persuading people with words. You gain it by becoming someone whose actions cannot be ignored. Someone who shows up consistently rather than occasionally. Someone who honors commitments, especially the ones made to themselves. Think about how rare that is. Many people struggle to keep promises to themselves, let alone to others. When people see you doing both with steady reliability, their perception of you changes. They begin trusting your word. They listen more carefully. That isn't arrogance, it's earned presence. And you know what's even more powerful than proving people wrong? Refusing to waste energy trying. Simply living in such a truthful and disciplined way that over time their doubts fade into silence. You don't need to argue, defend, or justify your journey. You just keep building, keep improving, and eventually your results speak for you. Your actions become your story. Aristotle once said, "Character is revealed through action." Words can be rehearsed, but actions expose the truth. Consistent behavior doesn't happen by accident. It must be practiced, intentional, and rooted in something deeper than temporary motivation. That's what makes it convincing. It's not performance, it's identity. It's who you have become. Let this truly sink in. People rarely remember your declarations. What they remember is your discipline. They remember the day you showed up when nobody applauded, the month you stayed focused while progress felt painfully slow, the season when you kept growing quietly while others were distracted. That's what builds a reputation. That's what earns you a place at the table, not flashiness, but foundation. Respect is not something you ask for. It is the natural outcome of discipline, clarity, and execution. When those three forces align day after day, week after week, you begin moving through the world with quiet strength. You no longer chase validation. It starts showing up on its own, and that isn't ego, it's gravity. You become someone people naturally want to be around, learn from, and collaborate with. Not because you shouted about your goals, but because you demonstrated them. Earn respect through results. You don't have to be perfect to earn respect, but you do have to be genuine. And being real isn't about sharing everything or shouting your worth from the rooftops. It's about one thing: alignment. When the way you think, speak, and act are all moving in the same direction, people feel it. There is a kind of integrity you carry that doesn't need to be explained. You become someone who doesn't just talk about values, but actually lives by them. And that's what earns respect. Not your titles, not your intentions, your results. There is power in that kind of simplicity. You don't have to convince anyone of your goodness, your strength, or your potential. Just be it. Live it. Breathe it. And if that takes time, so be it. Because nothing that truly lasts is built quickly. The people who earn real respect, the kind that stays, are the ones who show up again and again without needing applause. They stay focused on the process. They let their work accumulate until one day it speaks louder than anything they could have said. Carl Jung once said, "The greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of the parent." But this idea is not limited to parenting. It is about potential. When you do not live fully into your purpose, when your actions fail to reflect your inner truth, you do not only disappoint others, you disappoint yourself. That disappointment becomes quiet and heavy. It settles in your bones and slowly begins to shape how you see yourself. But when you start aligning your life with what you truly believe, when your actions begin producing outcomes that reflect your deepest values, something powerful begins to happen. Your self-respect starts to heal. And when you respect yourself, others naturally begin to follow. Here is the uncomfortable truth. Not everyone will like you when you start living with integrity. When your actions begin reflecting real standards, some people will naturally fall away. And that is okay. Respect and approval are not the same thing. Approval comes and goes, but respect is rooted in how consistently you live what you claim to believe. You can disagree with someone and still respect them because you know they are not pretending, they are not performing, they are simply being exactly who they say they are, and that kind of authenticity is rare. Epictetus once said, "Know first who you are, and then adorn yourself accordingly." In other words, understand what you stand for and let your results reflect it. Do not try to earn respect through noise, charm, or image. Earn it through consistency. Earn it through discipline. Earn it by showing up when it is difficult and choosing your values even when they cost you something. That is how character is built, and that is what people remember. Not the words you spoke, but the things you actually did. Respect built on results does not need a spotlight. It does not need an audience. It stands on its own. When you produce something real, whether it is a career you built, a skill you mastered, or a life you lived with quiet integrity, it shows. People notice not because you asked them to, but because the evidence becomes impossible to ignore. And evidence carries weight. It cuts through opinions, gossip, and temporary trends. No matter how much the world changes, truth always rises, and your results become your truth. Seneca once said, "It is a rough road that leads to the heights of greatness." The path towards self-respect and true external respect is rarely smooth. There will be doubt, there will be rejection, there will be long periods of silence. But if you remain steady, if you continue doing the work and refining yourself through every setback, you earn something far more valuable than attention. You earn trust. And trust is the foundation of all meaningful influence. It is the quiet agreement the world eventually makes with you. You truly are who you say you are. Respect is not something you demand, it is something you quietly become, not through noise, not through the need to be seen, but through the quiet strength of living in full alignment with who you are. When your actions speak, the world listens. Stay true, stay steady, and let your life echo louder than your words. If this message spoke to you, there is another video waiting on the screen that will take you even deeper. Watch it now and continue walking this path with intention. Thank you for being a part of Stoic Journal.